I'm a professional creative director slash designer slash artist. I make a lot of money doing creative, make about $300,000 a year doing this. That's decent for a creative guy. I know people making $500,000. I know some guys making $1 million. You can make a lot of money being creative. So here's the thing. Creative is a lot of, I'm being very blunt about this because this is also a very tough industry. So if you are into doing this, if you want to be creative and do this for a living, I'm gonna be very blunt about the great stuff and very blunt about the stuff that's tough about it. So being a creative director means that you are encompassing all things. It's design, it's writing, you could work in TV, you could work in movie, I've done visual effects, video games, toys, designing theme parks. If you've ever been to Legoland, I did about a third of that. California Adventure, I was a theme park designer for that. I started as a Disney animator. That's traditional drawing back in the days before computers. It was actually drawing and flipping pages, and you would you move them back really fast, back and forth. You can actually see these things move. Arguably, I was a very average animator, but I was very good at illustration and pitching and concept designing. They kicked me over to Imagineering, so I designed theme parks, and it was off to the races. I've had a very weird career. I've gone all over the place. Yeah, I started at Disney, I was at Lego, worked at Activision, PlayStation, worked for the NFL, Netflix, producing TV shows there. Hot Wheels, designing Hot Wheels cars, you guys know what those are. Worked at Warner Brothers Discovery, working on TV shows and streaming platforms. And right now, I'm the Vice President of Creative at a clothing company called MeUndies. So most of my week involves taking photos of really attractive people in their underwear. It's kind of cool. All this stuff is my work too, by the way. No, I did not work on Fortnite, so let's just get that out of the way. But I did work on, let's say worked on video games like car racing games, things like that. Now in this case, all right, this music's terrible. In this case, I came up with the idea of this, and then I worked with designers in Russia to model the games, model the cars. What's the game leveling? How do we score this? What's the currency system? How do we make things go? Like, what's the engagement? How are people going to come back to this over and over again? By the way, this is a free-form conversation. Ask any question anytime. Like, seriously, stop me at any point. Otherwise, I've had a lot of caffeine. I'm just gonna wander all over the place. This is not a formalized presentation. This is how I started. You know, this is what I was drawing like as a little kid. So then ultimately, by the way, I also started here. I'm a product of Long Beach Unified. So I went to Wilson, I went to Poly. Who dat? That's Snoop. So we all started at the same place. So there's no like luck of the draw or, by the way, that haircut is rad. I just want you to his hair like this. I look like Tony Hawk. We all start at the same place. All came out of Long Beach Unified. You know, there's no special inherent, like you don't get gifted into this. There's no luck of the draw. It's just hard work. It's all about grit. This is what I do now. Like, these are concept designs that I came up with and trying to pitch this idea for this video game when I was at Hot Wheels. So this is me designing and coming up with this concept and being like, this is what we should do and here's how we're gonna do it.
What program did you use to draw that?
This is Photoshop.
Wow.
Some 3D modeling because I wanted to cheat the perspective because perspective is really tough. And also drawing a concentric circle like that is also tough. But you know, a lot of it's Photoshop. Almost everything is done via Photoshop or some sort of design tool, like Illustrator or Maya, After Effects. And there's I'm gonna get into this. There's also a thing called producing, which is what I also do. Producing is, you don't have to necessarily draw or design or write. You can have a good idea, but you can also be an excellent organizer where you know these people that can design, and then you've got these people that can do 3D modeling. You know some copywriters, people that can write the copy. You know directors, you know technical guys. And you're the person that gets them all in this big bucket, and then you're telling them what to do and how to do it and when things need to be on time, and it's more of an organizational, but you still have input. You can still have an opinion on that. So if you don't feel that you have this innate talent to actually draw stuff, or that you don't want to do that, there is still a ways into this industry where you can make a heap of money organizing everybody to do this stuff. Again, more like 3D modeling, things like that. I'm just going to wander through this. So this is stuff I did at Legoland. My work is still being enjoyed by millions of people even to this day. My kids are not impressed, but that's life. A lot of things like California Adventure, coming up with, like, here's an elevation view of, like, let's make a fountain. Like, this is what it started with. And then ultimately, after budget concerns, that's what it wound up with. Like, kind of neat. You know, it's sometimes like you have these big grandiose ideas and then the budget will shrink it smaller and smaller. More stuff, concepts for theme park rides. That's a rarefied air to be able to get that type of work, because coming up with ideas for theme park rides is like a very dream job, but it's still out there. You can do things like design exhibits for, like, this is for E3. It's the largest video game convention in the world. It happens every year. It's like 4 days long. So that's a $5 million booth that we got to design and come up with, which is cool because then you go to the convention and you're watching people interact with things that you have come up with, your ideas, your interactions. You can come up with other things, like this is for the Army back, probably, I don't know, like when you guys were born. We were at war with Iraq, and we were losing a lot of people, and a lot of people were not joining the Army, and the Army was perceived as being this very rudimentary, most rudimentary of the four armed services. So the Army came to me and this agency that I was working with. They said, well, how do we get men to sign up for the Army? So put that together with young men, wayward young men, NASCAR, because at the time NASCAR was really big, and then video games, because everyone was video gaming. So we came up with this concept of, we had these 6 Humvees that had these cored out real weapons, but they had infrared, so you shoot them, but they would shoot out little infrared dots. And then they had these concave screens that go almost all the way around your vision, and so everyone's playing this life-size video game at the same time, driving through Islamabad, and you're shooting, you know, you're driving the things bouncing back and forth. It was basically like a theme park ride. And so at the end of it, we had these RFID tracking chips. These are things like we have in your phones. They track like your data and who you are and what you do. And so they would pull people off as they're coming off the ride. And they didn't want old guys like me, but if you were like 21, we had this really charming special forces guy. He would be like, hey, saw that you were rocking the M60 there. How do you feel about, they would charm the hell out of them, and then they would get their name, and then they would have recruiters call them. And recruiting attendance went up. It's kind of a weird, sick thing in retrospect, but it was still a really cool experience. So yeah, this makes sense, by the way, or am I just kind of rambling? Like I need like a little, okay. Other things you can do, UX design or UI, user interface or user experience. That's when you are on your phone. This is like you're coming up with a visual identity and like, okay, if I want to get to Instagram, what do I have to do? I have to swipe over, I have to touch this, and then when you're on Instagram, where's the home button? Or if you're on like TikTok, you know, what is this button? How do you navigate your way through every program? If you find yourself hitting the back button or the home button because you get lost, that means the UX designer has failed. It's all about creating this seamless architecture of navigating you through your phones. That's a really hot job right now. Like, people are writing their tickets. Good UI designers are making a ton of money. So in this case, I was working with UX UI designers to create a streaming platform for Warner Brothers Discovery. So, case in point, you know, the hierarchy of these buttons. Why are these buttons here? Why is this here? Why is this hero image right there and that button? All of this is done through trial and error and test, and by creative people, designers, and then you test it back and forth and see what actually works. Kind of cool. Same thing. Now in this case, I did a lot of this. This is called key art. So that's a really fun job as well. That's where the movie posters, the things you see on Netflix, those images that get you to entice you to draw the person in to watch that. This is really fun because that involves photo shoots. So going on photo shoots with movie stars and taking their photo and then dropping them into really cool backgrounds and like these really interesting designs. Same thing, you know, this is for a TV show I was working on called Trixie Motel. It's about a drag queen named Trixie Motel that bought a motel in Palm Springs. Anyways, it's a home remod show with a drag queen. It's kind of interesting. But it's neat, like going down the street in Hollywood and seeing a giant poster that your team or you worked on. It's exciting. It's exciting stuff. Again, more movie posters are what we call key art. Each one's like an original design, original photography, and you build out a ton of these. Like, you ever notice, you guys all have Netflix, yeah? You ever notice you turn on Netflix, and let's say it's Fast and Furious 6. You're like, I don't really want to watch it. Next day you come back, Fast and Furious 6 is still top of the main image, the hero image, but it's a different design. That's because what they're doing is we'll create like 12 different versions of these, and we'll serve them out to different people at different times to see what you might entice you to click on it. This image might be repellent to you for whatever reason. So you come back the next day, maybe we change it out and it's a different image. You're like, oh, that actually looks interesting. It's kind of a neat way of testing. But all this, creative people, creative stuff, creative teams. Again, ask any questions at any time. It's not just limited to that. Like, that's kind of fun, like designing blimps. And so you're out on like the other month I was walking around, I saw that flying around. That was cool. My team and I, we designed that. Billboards, neat stuff. How's this work? Yeah, you can do digital boards.
So when you do a digital board, the client comes to you, and what does a pitch sound like when they say, we want you to make us a digital board?
So in this case, it's in-house. So this is for Warner Brothers Discovery. And I was part of the internal creative team. And so my job was to I was the head of creative for all the promotions. So that could be the trailers, the TV commercials, posters, outdoor, social media, influencers, big wide category. So in this case, this is part and parcel of a larger package, which was, we did have what we call a media buy. That's where you have these people whose whole job is to plan out where we're going to buy advertisements. Are we going to buy a spot like 30 seconds on the Super Bowl for $7 million? Or are we going to have a series of billboards on La Cienega? Are we going to have, if we have a lot of money, are we going to do some weird outdoor activation where you're walking down the street and you see like a giant parade pop up and like just weird stuff? It's all about money, really. But yeah, we buy the rights to certain billboards, and then we would create these and then pitch them out. I mean, obviously you go through rounds and revisions and you show them to the head of marketing or whoever that may be, and then they approve it. But it has to go through me or be devised by me first. Fun stuff, just interesting photo shoots. That was kind of cool. Got to shoot Tay-Tay back before she was Tay-Tay. This was a long time ago. This is like 12, 15 years ago, before she was super big. And yeah, so in this case, store activations, designing headphones. That's another thing, product designers. That's a fun creative job. Here's the thing. These boots, this jacket, those shoes, stuff on the wall, everything, like even these light fixtures, everything around you has been designed or concepted by a creative person, which is kind of neat. Everything involves some sort of, this thing, who designed this? Like, it's kind of a weird design, but it's interesting and it probably works for some reason. But there's tons of jobs out there where you're just coming up with, it could be products, it could be clothing, it's apparel, but it all starts with this and being dedicated to your craft. So I don't know where I was going with this. That's a problem too, though, because everyone has an opinion. So if you're a lawyer or a scientist or a doctor, it's very black and white. It's very much, it is what it is because science or the law determines this is what it is. But when it's subjective, you may not like these boots, which is okay. It's a subjective experience. So that's tough sometimes when you are presenting an idea that you and your team, you think is really fantastic, and then someone goes, I don't like it. Well, why? They don't have a good answer. And that's the tough part of this job is, it's all subjective. I may think this is awesome, but I'm sure there's some person out there that thinks it super sucks. So that's a tough part of this job is you have to have a thick skin. Advertisements, I do a lot of commercialized creative, but it all starts with things like this, like a little sketch on a piece of paper ultimately leads to an actual physical experience, which is really cool. Like one of the coolest things I have is this old cocktail napkin where I sketched out an idea, and then that idea became a larger drawing, which became a technical drawing, which became I think this is awesome, but I'm sure there's some person out there that thinks it super sucks. So that's a tough part of this job, is you have to have a thick skin. Advertisements, I do a lot of commercialized creative, but it all starts with things like this, like a little sketch on a piece of paper ultimately leads to an actual physical experience, which is really cool. Like, one of the coolest things I have is this old cocktail napkin where I sketched out an idea, and then that idea became a larger drawing, which became a technical drawing, which became a physical model, and then that model became an actual just thing in the middle of a theme park. Like, that's kind of cool. We also have fun ideas where, like a Nike pop-up store. We took over, in Hollywood, we took over a building for a week. Didn't tell anybody, Nike, we built a store, no fanfare, whatever, and it was there for a week. And we sold Air Force Ones or whatever it was, like just a certain limited edition, got mobbed, like super mobbed, and then it shut down, gone. Fun stuff like that is really cool, where you just come up with neat ideas, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Fun little off projects. I designed a belt out of pickup truck parts, like that's corrugated steel and 10-penny nails. I did some stint for a bicycle company, designing helmets, backpacks. This is actually a piece of junk, but I got this built in China as a prototype. It ultimately super sucked, but I can live with that. Never sold. Interesting ideas for props, furniture, retail stores. When I was at Hot Wheels, I got to devise a monster truck jam. We used to be in partnership with Monster Jam. Yeah, Monster Jam. And we lost the rights to it, so we created our own called Hot Wheels Monster Trucks. And so that was fun, creating the story around it. And like, there's rival drivers. It was kind of like wrestling. They would fight, and then they would drive around and crush cars, but it was all Hot Wheels cars. That was kind of neat. It's still traveling around the States even today. Just interesting little drawings, coming up with car ideas. UX, UI, again, why is this image here? Why is that copy there? How many characters can we have before it starts to break the design? And then I do a lot of this. I do a lot of trailers. This is for a show called Narcos. So I worked on that show, got to do photo shoots in Colombia. So these are called promos or trailers. And this is fun too, because now you're into editing. So you're working with editors. That's a whole nother creative field that you can get into. There is so much to do. It just depends on what you want to do. But this is all about enticing people to get them into it. Like, do you want to watch a show? This is kind of cool. It makes you kind of watch a show. It's kind of neat. So do a lot of this stuff. It's a little commercialized, but it's still, you're telling a story. Anywho. And then again, working on photo shoots, like got to go down to Colombia, had a bodyguard, so I'm doing a photo shoot with these dudes. It was nuts. Like, almost got kidnapped. Really exciting stuff. Again, more photo shoots. There's for Netflix. People make a decision about what they want to watch in 0.09 seconds. Like, you will look at that little piece of art and go, I want to watch a show. No, I don't want to watch a show. So that's why we create so many different ones and farm them out to you to see if you want to actually watch it. It's a crazy phenomenon, and if you don't find what you want to watch on a platform within 90 seconds, you're off the platform. So it's all about creating engagement and getting people into this platform and keeping you there. Like, this would be the thing, like when you turn on Netflix and then it automatically starts playing a trailer.
And I'm assuming they pay extra in order to get their trailer to play automatically when you get to Netflix?
Say that again?
Is that like an ad thing where they pay extra?
No, you don't pay extra.
Oh.
this is just part of, Netflix is interesting because it's always changing. It's always evolving. They're doing anything that they can because they know attention is so limited. And because young people and now adults were so hypnotized by TikTok and Reels and YouTube in very short snippets that they have to create this atmosphere of engagement to keep you inside the platform. It's really, so that was cool. This is for a show called Ozark. We got to go to an old motel out in Palm Springs, and then we had, we threw like dead bodies into the pool, or we got all these like wildlife and money and put blood all over it, and then made it really, like working with live animals, that was a trip. And again, more key art. Oh yeah, there's that dead body. That was my buddy. That was our photographer. Our photographer's assistant. Yeah, kind of repetitive. I don't know why I put so much of this in here, but I just thought it's fun stuff because you're doing a little bit of like computerized illustration. You're working with typography. Typography is all about letters, how they look, the kerning, how wide is it, how narrow is it. Got to work on Dave Chappelle's very first Netflix special. That was a trip. Pitching him like ideas of how we're going to promote his show. Worked on a lot of comedies. Tracy Morgan. This guy. Yeah, more of the same. This one actually won an Oscar for Best Documentary. So that was kind of fun, making a photo illustration of, it's all about doping. So, more of the same. Stop me if I'm going on too long. Oh, okay, so this is cool. This is the show House of Cards. So, made this, and then I hired some graffiti guys to go up there and spray paint it and make it look really, make it look vandalized. So, give it that little extra push, that little level of like distressed, like it was. But it's interesting. It makes you. Anybody like house or techno? Anybody know what EDC is? Electric Daisy Carnival? No? Yeah. All right. It's a giant 3-day rave out in Vegas. It's like I don't know, 400,000 people go. So got to build this giant DJ booth. We had like. It was like 2 stories tall, tons of people going through it in the middle of this giant rave with 7 different stages going on around it. It's pretty nuts. So there's another thing too, is if you design trade show booths, if you design theme park experiences, you get to travel to different places and go build stuff, and then people interact with it. Other things like Comic-Con, there's a show called Evil Dead. And so I hired a bunch of guys and put makeup on them, make them look like these things called, there's these zombies in the show. And so we had them walk around Comic-Con and attack people. More trade show stuff for cars. Commercials I've shot. These are storyboards. Worked on some key art for video games. This is fun, like pitching the idea of like how to do the visual effects for a McDonald's commercial. We had these girls walk by with this McDonald's food, and this graffiti dude jumps out and interacts with all the objects that they're on. And then storyboarding, that's where you're drawing out each individual idea that you want to pitch, and then that's where you present it and you go, okay, so it's all these fish and they're underwater and they're watching a concert, and then something happens that, I don't know how this related to Shell, the oil company, but here we are. And then drawing. I think this is my last slide, but it really gets down to, it's constant craft, constant care of, like, if you want to do this, you have to start now. You are working, you are at home drawing, or you're writing. Like there are people out there that this is all they do. It is a commitment, and it's also, it's a tough job because you can get fired very quickly. You're one bad idea from getting ousted, or in a downturn. The first places that get downsized are marketing teams, HR, PR, and creative, because those are the soft jobs. Finance and tech, usually the things that keep a business afloat as it is perceived by management, those usually have a little bit more longevity. But if you're really good, you should be okay. Also, the problem there is right now with AI, Mid-Journey and things like that, I think it's the devil's work, because basically it's taken 10 billion images and scraped it all off the internet of designs and art of people who spent their entire lives designing. And now it's scraped that off there, and then all you have to do is type in Shepard Fairey, Banksy, Victorian era dress, it looks soulless. It's also,
I can show you guys some of that, because I've seen some on Sunday, CBS Sunday Morning, they did a whole series on it, so I'll show you guys what he's talking about.
yeah, it's straight garbage. It's tough because it's now commodified and cheapened something that took years and years of dedication to do. You know, I want AI to do my taxes, so I have more time to do art. And instead, it's turned out that now it's doing the art for us. So that's something. I mean, it's ultimately a tool, and we'll all get used to it. It's not necessarily going to take people out of their jobs, but it is definitely going to make things a little bit tougher. Same thing with writing. You know, I actually use AI to write things like job descriptions or things I don't want to do. I'll type in, write a job description for a graphic designer. Pumps out 2 pages of decent, passable stuff. So it is kind of interesting. I think that's it. That's where I'm at.
Please, you want to ask a question?
Oh, yeah. Like, I guess if you want to go into a creative career,
Yeah.
what would be a good major for college to be able to dip your toes in a little bit of everything?
Good question. Depending on the discipline that you want to go into, if you want to go to animation, like get into animation, then go to an animation school. Go to Cal Arts, go to Ringling, go to Art Center. But generally, just get any passable education. Any college you go to will be fine. It's really about proximity and then making connections in college and starting to reach out, getting internships.
Is it difficult to find internships? In
No, not necessarily. You know, it's all about grit. It's everything I've learned is about grit. It is just constantly, persistently doing it over and over again in light of rejection. You just keep going. It's a, you know, I can say that about life in general, but I find that in creative, the guys I went to college with, who still talk, and now they're directors at Pixar, they're directors at Disney. One guy just won an Oscar last year for an animated movie. Guillermo del Toro, he just won an Oscar
Wow.
2 nights ago,
Cool.
last week for Pinocchio. And
Wow.
in school at that guy. So kind of cool.
Really
So grit, determination, just keep going.
And networking. Networking probably
Yeah,
too.
networking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Get on LinkedIn. That's a social profile for business people, and start developing that profile, and be very incredibly professional about it. It's not TikTok. It's not Instagram. That's where you're going to start to make your connections. LinkedIn is a super helpful tool. I've gotten most of my jobs off of that. What else?
What movies did you work on or shows while you were in animation?
I worked on. Developed in some commercials. I worked on this movie called Elf with Will Ferrell. So I was a matte painter on that one. And so matte painters, that's where you shoot something, and digitally you go in and you paint the background, or you fake it. Like that whole New York scene at the end when Santa flies away with Buddy the elf, that was all fake. That was all done, me and 3 other people in a room working 80-hour weeks, getting paid a crap ton of money to digitally paint that. What's kind of cool is I'm in every single window of New York City and Godzilla and my friends and my family. Because film is 24 frames a second, I would drop myself in there and your eye can't register it, which is kind of neat. So if you stop the frame, I can point out in the movie where I'm at, and like I've hidden my name in corners of buildings and stuff like that. So we're at visual dailies. Dailies are every day the visual effects crew, the visual effects director watches the visual effects. Like he goes, hey Bob, the reindeer's fur, you know, the 3D animated reindeer, that fur looks a little bit too crinkly, you gotta soften that down. The lighting's too weird on that effect shot. Ted, I know what you're doing. Don't think you're fooling anybody. I will fire you if you do that again. Oh shit. Like there's always weirdos hiding stuff. Like a lot of Disney animated movies, there's a lot of fake stuff in the background. Like animators will drop in like weird imagery and dick jokes and things like that. Anyways, long way. What else? Hit me up.
I guess for like big companies like Disney and Pixar,
Yeah.
is it like, I guess, what's the process of finding a job within like companies?
Go on the company website and then start applying. And make inroads on LinkedIn. Meet people who work at that company and start networking with them. Make friends with HR people, human resources. those.
And how much does your portfolio play into it? Like,
Well,
that would be
that's
the next step.
Yeah.
Okay, so have an awesome portfolio too.
Okay.